Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, February 22nd, first day of the week. And of course, a very headline-driven market right now with geopolitical things going on and the market trying to kind of find a footing and figure out, I guess, how severe some of these things are. So we'll go through and we'll try to talk a little bit about today's price action. I think when you look at the performance for the day, well, before we get to the performance, risk disclaimer in front of you, please make sure that you read this. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. But, you know, another down day for the markets, just kind of continuation from what we saw towards the end of last week. You know, maybe there's a couple silver linings in here. I will go through that with you, but SPY was down another 1% for the day. The IWM is down 1.4%. The microcaps were down 1.5%. The Qs, where are the Qs? They also finished down 1%, although they didn't really go too far down from how they started for the day. I always look at, you know, to see potential strength, weakness, relative strength too. What performed after the open, right? So when we know like a lot of things gap down, like we did, I try to look for relative strength, and I do look for changes, percentage change from the open. So that's why you'll see me things highlight here in the column. If you move a little bit further down here, some other things of note, IBD 50 ETF down 1.5%. ARK is down another 2% for the day. Their names. Value outperformed growth a little bit, but again, it's one of those things where, you know, if you're looking at one of these ratio charts where you've got one in the numerator, one in the denominator, and you could see value outperforming, it's just because right now it's going down less. Right? I always say when you're looking at these ratio charts, always very important to understand that you actually have to go long one and short the other to get the relationship, because something like this, a day like this, you could have one outperform even though it's still down for the day, right? So if you're long one of those thinking that you're going to make a lot of money, looking at that relationship chart, it's not always the case, as sometimes one is down just less than the other. All right, well, let's get into the S&P chart. Well, we did find you know, a little bit of a footing for the day, but it's really tough to say that, you know, looking at the price action that happened again, that that we're going to kind of stop going down here. I think it's too early. I know everybody likes predictions, right? You know, I see that all the time on Twitter, you know, the people that like to put out a prediction every day, you know, and then when they don't get it right, they just contradict with another prediction. And then one of those two predictions is right. I don't like to do any of that. I like to basically just have some levels to watch. The price action, and I was talking a little bit about Ben on this on Ben Zinga's show earlier today. You know, I use the price action and the levels to tell me when I'm right or wrong. And you know, when I look at the value areas and volume at price, it gives me something significant, right? There is a formula and there is a statistical significance to that. I still have to follow, you know, appropriately what the levels are. And sometimes it's just not a clear picture for the day. So even though, you know, you can use, and it doesn't, you know, have to be the market web's indicator, volume at price. It could be some other indicator. Sometimes they don't always give you clear signals, right? And it's not, in my opinion, it's best to stick with, you know, if your indicators work for you, stick with them. Don't go over to 5 other indicators that will try to shed light on the situation, right? Because that's not consistent. You want to be consistent, right? So again, you know, I think stick with the things that kind of that help you and guide you, right? And if they're not giving you clear signals, that means lower your risk until you have a better signal. It doesn't mean you cancel out the 5 things on your chart and put 5 new things on your chart, right? I see that often too, where, well, that's not working, so I'll overlay it with this indicator. And oh, look at that, that's giving me, you know, this is not consistent, right? You want to really be consistent with what your analysis is. And, you know, sometimes if you don't have a really good, clear picture, you've got conflicting messages, then that means you dial down your risk, you know, and that's kind of, I'm getting kind of a little bit to the conclusion of this video, but let me start to kind of break things down for you. So yes, what I see here on the daily chart, and you'll notice I go through multiple time frames, and sometimes I put out multiple timeframes on Twitter without really giving much explanation, but it's hard to kind of relay everything in a tweet. So one of the things that I'm looking for this week is, now that we're kind of down here, right? And it was just last week where we were above the 200-day moving average, right? It was just a few days ago in terms of market days, right? Well, and I mentioned that the next stop down on the daily chart could be the bottom of value. Well, we did actually breach that in the overnight session, and we're still holding that. So that level is 42.78, right? And again, that kind of coincides with this price action that we have back in here. But again, remember, this February value area is based on all the market activity that happened, all the volume, all the price, and of course the time, which was January. So that's why it's significant, right? And that's 42.78. Now, when we break this apart in terms of looking at the 1 hour chart, you could see a couple things in here, right? We've kind of gone back and we've tested this area. Now, again, we didn't get all the way down to where the lows were back in here, back at the end of January, but we're kind of hanging around this, this digestion in here. So does this hold? That's really the question I think that everybody wants to know. Does this hold? I don't have the answer to that question. We don't have enough information yet, right? And that's kind of like, I'll go through a couple charts, a couple single name charts, but I think it's just really dicey out there, and one of the charts that I put out on Sunday night, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of consolidation around this virgin point of control. It's a little bit of a support. Well, we didn't really hold that. And we did run into the week's resistance, right? So the 1 hour chart will give us the resistance support for the week, and 4388, which is basically what we're seeing almost week to week, right? Last week we talked about this level, right? How we could not get into the value area for the week. And that was a good signal. So we just didn't have the power. We didn't have the volume. There wasn't enough buyers to basically take us to do any type of changing of the short-term trend. So it's same thing so far. Beginning of the week, we smacked right into that 43.38 and it got rejected, right? So now we're kind of sitting here where either the lows are going to hold or we're going to go back and retest this 43.88. And I don't really have a good answer for that. There's too much noise on the tape. So we'll go through a couple other things here. We'll talk about the NASDAQ or the Qs. We got very close to taking out that downside VPOP, which, just another one down there. So we actually did go lower, but we didn't close below. Oh, let me go back to, sorry. There's one other thing. So I talked about the daily, I talked about the 1 hour, and then I use the 5 minute too. The 5 minute will give me signals for the day. So I tweeted this out earlier. Once, we went basically straight down since 10 o'clock, which by the way, has been the pattern, right? What we went over in the pre-market session was be cognizant of this pattern every day, right? Sorry, it's not every day, but a lot of days so far in 2022. We try to go higher. And then by somewhere between 10 to 10:30, usually is where we stall and we just go the other direction. So, we were talking about AMD this morning, which got a nice upgrade this morning. But I said, hey, play this thing for a quick scalp and don't look for anything else with that trade. And this thing got right up into resistance, right, on the 1 hour chart. Right. So if you were playing this and you bought this around like 115 and change, your area of resistance, like using using the market webs, is 118, right? So it's right now, if you're trading things to the long side, you just cannot be greedy. They have to be scalp trades until some areas of the market start to turn, right? And regain regain the trends. For now, everything is a scalp. That is a growth name. There's just is nothing, in my opinion, that is high growth, that is anything more than that. So a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. Things are just not acting well enough to do anything else. So that kind of comes to the next point. But yeah, so this has been the story, and I mentioned it. It's been the pattern. What I'm looking for is this pattern to change, right? But for now, I respect the pattern. And I don't chase into this. You cannot chase these couple first, 5-minute green bars of the day, the only thing you can do is kind of position on the first, which again is not my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing, what I usually do, and this goes with adjusting your system. I usually wait for the first 15 minutes to go by, right, of the market, right? Because I'm more of a swing trader, and I actually like to put the positions on at the end of the day, not the beginning of the day. But if I'm going to play in that arena, I usually wait for the first 15 minutes to go so I can get a sense of the direction. However, if you've been doing that in 2022, and you've waited for the first 15 minutes and then acted, you're kind of picking the high point for the day, half the days. So what has been working is either buying a little bit pre-market or buying on the first 5-minute bar and then unwinding 20 minutes later. So I'm looking for that trend to change, but for now, that's been the pattern, right? And that's the best I could, that's the best I could tell you, is that's what the pattern is, and I'm looking for it to change. But until then, you got to honor it, right? If you're playing things to the upside, right? All right. Yeah, so I was going to go over NASDAQ very quickly. Just, again, back and forth type action. There's a VPOP that's lingering down here. I don't know if that needs to be taken out. But again, we're trading way below the 200-day moving average. We're trading below value. And that's exactly what I just described is the only way I would be trading this group of stocks right now, is just a quick scalp. And I'm talking about like AMD is a perfect example. Buying something at 115, selling it at like 117 or 118, and then getting out and watching. Now, things are also, so that's that. Russell, I thought was kind of interesting, went green, I think, a little bit in the beginning of the day, but that finished down a little bit less than 1%, but still kind of looks ugly. There's not anything positive here in this stuff. So again, I wish I had something more positive, but here's a good example too of what's going on. And this is something that I saw, I think towards the end of January, when we started to enter earnings season. I think I was talking about Netflix and how much it went down for earnings. Take a look at Home Depot, right? Now, Home Depot is an expensive stock, right? It is, there's a premium to this stock. Right, it is a PE of over 20, which is kind of high for a retailer. So it's getting a premium here. But you take a look at the earnings history, right? So it finished down 8.85%. Do you see? So again, this is the right column here. So this is the price action after the name report, the day after the name reports earnings, or the day of if it reports in the morning. So 8.85 is what it did today. Have you seen any time where Home Depot has reported down 8% in the last, now this only goes back like 10 years, a little over 10 years, but do you see any time where Home Depot has been down 8%? No, you haven't. So does this mean? Oh, it's a buying opportunity. It's down more than it usually is. No, I don't view it like that. I view that there's problems in the system, right? I view that there's to say that there's problems in the system is not the right term. I would say that this market is just not acting very well for Home Depot to be down 9%. It's just that's more than they've gone down in any other quarter in the last 11 years. So, and they usually have something that's kind of not great in their quarter. So yeah, I view that as we're not out of the woods when you see a Home Depot go down 9% on earnings. All right. Lowe's reports tomorrow morning. Maybe this one actually beats, because sometimes they do that. I don't know. Maybe I'll throw on some lows if it's not trading too wide. I forgot to think about that trade, but let me go through a couple other things. So a couple of things that I'm watching, because I don't have a ton of things that I think are actionable with this type of price action, right? What I'm watching, what I find that was interesting for the day, is look at how much the energy stocks were down today. So being that really nobody knows what's going to happen, everybody has ideas, and it seems like everybody on Twitter is an expert about geopolitical conflicts, because every time I put something out, I get really angry responses and people seem to know everything on Twitter these days, which, could be an indicator at this point. People are very angry everybody seems to know exactly what's going to happen, right? So for people to be super confident in this market tells me, and especially on the bearish side, that hopefully we're kind of getting to a place in sentiment where it's starting to get a bit washed out, considering people are so confident that things are going to go down to the downside. So I don't have anything to measure that, but you just kind of keep some of these things in the back of your mind, right? Still, the price action has to confirm that. But yes, what I was going to say here in energy is that, don't you think it's kind of interesting that as the tensions escalate, we just heard from what Russia is somewhat planning to do, right? Energy stocks were not up today, right? So oil did finish up today, but it could be a little bit of buy the rumor, sell the news, even though we don't have all the news out yet, right? I rely so much more on the price action than I do on the news headlines, right? You don't really know what they're intending. It's just like when you get news on a company, you're still not sitting in the CEO's, in the headquarters, right? You don't really know everything that's going on, and you rely on the price action to tell you if something is trending, something's not, something's looking weak. But you could see, the crude did not take out the highs from what we saw back on 214. So I think that's kind of telling for the energy stocks, right? That they did not go up on a day like this. Many of them were up pre-market, and they saw profits. Also, look at the volume today in crude. So I don't know. Maybe we start to see a little bit of rotation out of the energy group and into some other areas. So I think the thing to do right now is just to kind of look for names that you're interested in. And watch for levels. So I'll go through just two quick names, right? And then if you want, I'll show you my trades for the day. But Datadog, right? This is a name that I'm interested in, right? Nice move up here, had earnings, gapped up. Earnings gap is essentially filled, very close to it. What I would be, where I have my alert set for this is 162. Right. So someone was asking me on Twitter about another value area, and they're like, well, what does that mean? That means it's doing something different. It's trying to turn the trend. Now, let's say that instead of waiting for this top of value to be taken out, let's say I try a trade at 160, provided that you get a bar close inside value, right? Then I immediately set my stop to right below value, right? And that's it. And then, there's no prediction. It's just to say, hey, I would probably be taking some off at 170, right? And if it doesn't hold inside value like it did here, well, clearly this bar did not close inside value, it would be to taking it off right away, guys. And that's basically trading, right? So the more that you find people that are just about making predictions about this stock or that stock, right? They're not really good risk managers, in my opinion, and they're not really good traders. Right? It's all about risk to reward and probabilities, right? That's where you're going to find more of your edge in trading, because at the end of the day, with all these people who make predictions, they don't know, right? No one knows, right? So what I try to do is just trade levels. So I hope that if this establishes itself inside value, then the 70% rule is in effect, and that means that there's a 70% chance. And that's just based on statistics, not a prediction, that the price action will go all the way through. So again, it's not ready yet. The fact that it keeps getting there and getting rejected, right? Just like back here, gets to the top of value and gets rejected. So whether, we've been seeing this now for a while, where stocks get to a particular resistance point and they just get rejected, right? So we just have to wait for it. And a lot of times you're going to get a lot of false signals, and that's kind of what we're seeing all over the place. The stock that I tried trading today, which is another one on my list, and I'll give these things a try, but this was Live Nation. Take a look at last week's price action in Live Nation, right? It cannot get out of the value area, right? Look at how many times it tried, and you did not get one closing bar above there. Same thing with today, right? You could not get above this 119 level, right? It made another attempt, but not higher. It's just not ready yet. So what you do is you set an alert, And then you hope that eventually when this thing does start to break, it gets some momentum to it. But this is a waiting game, guys, you know, and that's one of the things that I stressed in my weekend video to members. So you got to have patience for this market. These whipsaw moves and false moves, they will drive you crazy, right? And if you need to take a break because you're getting you know, you're getting tired by these moves and watching so many names get up to resistance and fail, you know, then take a break. You know, I talked about that, I think somewhere in the last couple of days. Hey, I might take a quick trip to go skiing a little bit, right? And let this market kind of straighten itself out. You know, you're not going to miss anything, right? If things, I talked about a couple names that, you know, gave a couple examples back in 2020, you know, after the pandemic, and once the price action started to stop going down and we saw some leaders emerge, right? It's not one day. I mean, it's nice to kind of, you know, observe things, but you're not going to find that in just one day to say, oh, the bottom is in, right? It's going to be a bit of a process. You know, so I was talking about Tesla and what happened to Tesla back in, you know, in March of 2020, right? It's had started to trend there. So, and if you missed the first couple dollars or $10, right, the move was much larger than that, right? So it doesn't really matter that you missed the first couple dollars. It's more important that you find that it's actually bottomed, right, and starting to kind of trend and retaking its 20-day moving average and its 50-day moving average, right? So there's plenty of time for these things. So I would not feel like you're in a rush or anything like that, you know, or getting frustrated was the word that I was looking for. All right, guys. So be patient. I mean, and this is nothing new in terms of saying being patient, right? This price action all year long for most stocks has been atrocious, and you just cannot. You can't make money out of nothing if you're not playing both sides of the market. Right. So you know, I gear these videos to being more long, right? To, you know, and I'm trying to trade more things on the short side. You know, my trades for the day, look at the trading I did today. You know, essentially nothing. I mentioned I tried LYV. I took that off. I'm in I like the look of these vaccine makers to the downside, right? But, you know, there wasn't any major momentum there today to the downside. Right, but I took a target in NVAX, and I'm looking for this thing to kind of break down and kind of retest these lows here in Novavax. And this name reports not earnings not this week but next week. But if you go through and look at the other vaccine charts, the Moderna and the BioNTech, they kind of look similar. I just don't like Moderna because it reports earnings this week. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.